A single slice of pizza usually sells for a few dollars, but behind that slice sits rent, staff wages, dough, cheese, and a monthly electric bill. So, how does a pizza restaurant actually make money? And why do so many pizzerias close within their first year? From the outside, the average neighborhood pizzeria always looks busy. Customers coming in, pizzas coming out of the oven nonstop. But behind the scenes, how much money is actually left in the register at the end of the month often surprises even the owner. In this episode, we'll break down the full financial anatomy of a pizza restaurant, where the revenue comes from, where the costs go, why delivery apps are both a blessing and a curse, and what the truly profitable places have in common. We'll go through it with real numbers and concrete examples. Let's get into it. And the revenue model looks simple on the surface, but it actually has several layers. First, dine-in sales. A customer walks in, sits down, orders. This is where extra drinks, desserts, and appetizers push up the average check size. A soda sold alongside a pizza can actually carry a higher margin than the pizza itself, since the drink's cost is nearly fixed while its price is high. Second, direct takeout. The customer orders and picks up in person, no middleman involved. This is the most profitable channel for the business because there's no platform fee and no delivery driver cost. The only expense is ingredients and labor. Third, sales through third-party delivery platforms. Revenue looks the same on paper, but the commission taken by the platform quietly eats into the net profit. We'll cover this channel in more detail shortly. Fourth, catering and bulk orders, offices, weddings, school events. Here the per unit cost drops because dough and ingredients are processed in bigger batches at once. Oven efficiency improves, and labor produces more output per hour. Fifth, there's a channel some businesses overlook entirely: frozen or par-baked pizza, sold as retail product carrying the restaurant's name. Even at a small scale, this can be an additional, relatively low-effort revenue stream. So a pizzeria's total revenue may look like a single number, but it's really the sum of several channels, each with a very different profit margin. An owner who doesn't track which channel each dollar came from will never be able to answer the question, "Sales look great, so why isn't there any money left?" Here's the relative weight of these channels also shifts over time. A decade ago, most of a pizzeria's revenue came from dine-in and direct takeout. Today, in many city centers, that's flipped. More than half of revenue now comes through delivery platforms. That shift has forced owners to redo their profit math entirely because the same top-line revenue now translates to a smaller net profit. Smart operators try to balance these channels against each other. For example, they treat the heavy traffic coming from platform orders as an opportunity to pull those customers toward direct ordering. A business card or discount code tucked inside the delivery box can convince a first-time platform customer to call directly next time. Ingredient costs. In the industry, this is called food cost, and the target is usually 28 to 35% of revenue. A business that runs above this range won't have enough margin left to cover everything else. Cheese is the single biggest line item on its own. Mozzarella prices swing with the global dairy market, and in a good margarita pizza, cheese alone can account for nearly half the ingredient cost. Drought in dairy producing countries, rising feed costs, or currency swings directly hit businesses that rely on imported cheese. Dough is relatively cheap: flour, water, yeast, and salt, but it demands labor time. Places that prepare their dough a day ahead and let it cold ferment get a better, more digestible result. But that means extra planning, extra storage space, and extra labor cost. Sauce is usually tomato-based and one of the cheaper line items, though restaurants using premium Italian tomatoes or concentrated paste can see this cost double. Some chains cut corners here, using standard tomato puree and sacrificing quality to lower cost. Toppings: pepperoni, mushrooms, olives, peppers. Each represent a separate supply chain. Some of these ingredients are subject to seasonal price swings. Certain vegetables get pricier in winter, which squeezes the margin on fixed price menu items. Waste enters the picture here too: spoiled ingredients, unusable trimmings, over-prepped items that go unused. In a poorly managed kitchen, waste rates can climb to 5 to 10%, and that comes straight out of profit. Businesses that don't do daily inventory counts usually only discover this loss at month end, far too late. In the end, ingredient cost is the line item an owner can control the most, yet it's also the easiest to lose track of. A 2 to 3% rise in waste per slice can turn into thousands of dollars in lost profit by the end of the month at a place selling hundreds of pizzas. Supplier choice plays a critical role too. Businesses locked into a single supplier have no leverage against price hikes. Those working with multiple suppliers and regularly comparing prices can save 5 to 10%. Some large chains negotiate directly with producers, cutting out the middleman's margin entirely. a move that puts pressure on smaller businesses' competitiveness. Portion standardization is a rarely discussed but high impact factor. If every pizza maker eyeballs a different amount of cheese or sauce, the same product ends up with a different cost every time. Kitchens using digital scales and standardized measuring tools get both consistent flavor and a predictable cost. This small discipline is one of the most effective ways to keep the food cost ratio on a straight line month to month. Menu engineering matters here too. Businesses that calculate the cost and price of every single item can see which pizza is genuinely profitable and which one just sits on the menu for variety's sake. A pricey specialty pizza, topped with premium ingredients, might contribute very little to total profit despite its high price tag, simply because it doesn't sell in volume, while a plain margarita, with a lower per unit margin but high sales volume, can be the restaurant's real moneymaker. Without this analysis, the showpiece items left on a menu are often exactly the ones eating up the most kitchen time and ingredients while returning the least. Rent and staff expenses. Rent is a variable that's just as important as location. A storefront on a busy street brings high visibility, but rent there can eat up 10 to 15% of revenue. A side street location is cheaper, but then marketing and delivery infrastructure become necessary to attract customers. As a general rule, rent plus staff costs combined shouldn't exceed 35 to 45% of revenue. Cross that line and the business becomes fragile. Even a small dip in sales can throw off cash flow. On the staffing side, a pizzeria's core team typically includes a pizza maker, a kitchen assistant, front of house cashier staff, and a delivery driver. Each person's wages, insurance, meal allowance, and any overtime pay add up to total staff cost. Busy hours may require extra shifts, which makes weekly labor costs harder to predict. In a small operation where the owner also works in the kitchen, this lowers the visible cost. But the owner's own labor has a hidden cost that's usually never accounted for. Because of this, many small pizzeria owners are effectively earning below minimum wage per hour since they count their own labor as free. And over time, this can lead to burnout. Fixed costs like electricity, gas, and oven maintenance also come into play here. For places using wood-fired ovens especially, fuel costs can fluctuate seasonally. Wood prices rise in winter, while cooling costs go up in summer. Insurance annual rent increases baked into the lease, taxes, and municipal fees are also easy to forget. Individually small, together they form a significant part of total fixed costs and are often overlooked in budget planning. Shift scheduling directly affects profitability too. A pizzeria's busiest hours are typically 6 to 9 p.m. and weekends. Overstaffing outside those hours creates unnecessary cost. Businesses that accurately forecast demand and schedule shifts accordingly can bring staff costs down to around 25% of revenue, while a rigid, unchanging shift system can easily push that number up to 32 to 35%. Training costs shouldn't be ignored either. Getting a new pizza maker up to standard can take weeks, and during that period, the business deals with both lower productivity and possible ingredient losses from mistakes. In businesses with high staff turnover, this training cost repeats constantly and adds up to a significant annual expense. Delivery app commissions. This has been the most contentious topic of the last decade. Food delivery apps bring in customer traffic and visibility, but they take a commission of 20 to 30% in return. Let's put this in concrete terms. On a $20 order, if the platform takes a 25% commission, the restaurant is left with $15. Subtract ingredient cost, packaging, delivery, and labor share from that $15, and the net profit can shrink to just $1 to $2, under 10%. The same order taken dine-in or over the phone could easily yield triple the net profit. And that's why many businesses set menu prices 10 to 20% higher for orders coming through delivery platforms compared to dine-in prices. Customers usually don't notice since there's rarely an easy way to compare, and the price gap doesn't stand out in the app's interface. Some businesses try building loyalty programs to steer customers toward their own app or phone orders instead, since that channel carries no commission. A QR code on the box saying something like "Order direct next time and save" is a small but effective tactic. But pulling that off requires strong brand recognition and customer trust. Not easy for a newly opened small business. There's competition among the platforms themselves too. Some businesses list on multiple platforms to widen their reach, but that means separate menu management, separate commission rates, and separate customer service processes for each one. That operational load is a serious time cost, especially for small businesses. Advertising and promoted placement fees add another cost layer on the platform side. Businesses wanting to appear near the top of search results have to set aside an ad budget on top of the commission. This can push total platform cost above 30%. Businesses that don't factor in this extra cost end up overestimating their real profitability. In the end, delivery platforms cut both ways. They provide reach and visibility, but they thin out the profit margin. Businesses that don't strike this balance correctly fall into the paradox of we're getting tons of orders, but somehow not making money. Some businesses counter the commission burden with a different strategy, setting a minimum order amount, since low value orders can wipe out nearly all profit once fixed delivery cost and commission are factored in. Many pizzerias refuse platform orders below a certain amount or add an extra delivery fee. This may turn away some customers in the short term, but it protects profitability over time. Profit margin. Putting all these pieces together, a typical pizza restaurant's net profit margin usually lands between 6 and 12%. That's considered average for the food industry, but it varies significantly based on the restaurant's size, location, and sales channel mix. A rough breakdown might look like this: ingredient cost around 30%, staff 25 to 30%, rent and fixed costs 10 to 15%, delivery commissions, if applicable, 5 to 10%, marketing and other expenses 5%, leaving 6 to 12% as net profit. This seemingly thin margin is made up for through volume. A pizzeria earns a meaningful total by selling a large number of pizzas at a low margin per unit. That's why increasing sales volume is often a more effective strategy than raising prices. Fixed costs like rent and core staff don't scale up at the same rate as sales growth. For example, between a place selling 100 pizzas a day and one selling 200, rent, base electricity, and core staff salaries don't change all that much. But while the second business's revenue doubles, its fixed costs only rise by around 10 to 15%, meaning the net profit margin actually grows as sales volume increases. That's why many owners see opening a second location rather than staying single store as a way to spread the same fixed costs across more revenue. When evaluating profit margin, it's worth looking at the absolute number, not just the percentage. A business making $50,000 a month at a 12% margin nets $6,000, while a business making $200,000 a month at an 8% margin nets $16,000. That's why some owners deliberately sacrifice a bit of margin to grow volume, especially in highly competitive areas. Keeping prices a bit lower to grow the customer base can end up more profitable overall. The break-even point, the moment a business actually starts turning a profit, is another crucial part of this math. An owner who doesn't know the minimum daily sales needed to cover fixed costs can't tell which days actually generate profit and which ones just barely cover expenses. Knowing this number also leads to smarter decisions on promotions and discounts. The biggest risks. First risk, fluctuating ingredient prices. Cheese and flour prices in particular are tied to global markets, and the owner has no control over that. Cheese prices can rise 30% in a single year, and raising menu prices by that same amount immediately can drive customers away. Second risk, staff turnover. Turnover is high in the restaurant industry. Training new hires costs time and money, service quality drops during the transition, and that affects customer satisfaction. Third risk, overdependence on a single delivery platform. If that platform raises its commission rate or changes its algorithm, a business that relies too heavily on it becomes exposed. Even the mere threat of being delisted from the app can put serious pressure on a business. Fourth risk, location risk. Foot traffic on a street can shift quickly due to road construction, a new competitor opening nearby, or even a change in a public transit route, and an owner can be caught completely off guard by these shifts. Fifth risk, cash flow management. Rent and wages are due on fixed dates, but sales fluctuate seasonally. Summer months or holiday periods can bring noticeable dips, causing real cash strain, especially for smaller businesses. Sixth risk, overexpansion. Opening new locations too quickly makes quality control harder at each branch and can put brand reputation at risk. A quality issue at just one branch can affect the whole brand in the age of social media. Seventh risk, equipment and technology failures. An oven breaking down, a POS system crashing, or an internet outage can cause serious revenue loss within hours, especially at a business heavily reliant on delivery orders. Businesses without backup equipment or a contingency plan are left completely exposed to these kinds of technical failures. Eighth risk, competitive density. Multiple pizzerias opening in the same neighborhood triggers price competition and drags everyone's margin down. Aggressive discount campaigns from large chains in particular squeeze the pricing room available to small independent businesses. forcing them to either cut prices and sacrifice margin or differentiate through quality and service to survive. Secrets of successful pizza. Restaurants looking at what successful businesses have in common, a few patterns stand out: tightly tracking ingredient waste, investing in sales channel diversity, keeping the menu simple, building a base of repeat customers, and regularly recalculating costs to keep prices updated accordingly. Places that do daily inventory counts can raise profitability by a few percentage points. Doing a small number of items really well makes ingredient management easier and strengthens brand identity. Loyalty programs and neighborhood loyalty lower marketing costs. And the only way to protect margin against inflation is to update prices against costs on a regular schedule. Another shared trait among successful businesses: tracking the numbers consistently. Owners who review food, cost ratio, staff cost, and channel based profitability on a weekly basis can catch a problem while it's still small and act on it. Owners who wait until month end usually find out too late. By then, the damage is already done. Running a pizza restaurant is about far more than a hot oven and a good recipe. From ingredient costs to commissions, from rent to staff management, every decision affects that thin profit margin. In the end, the businesses that survive aren't the ones making the tastiest pizza. They're the ones keeping the closest eye on their numbers. Flavor is what brings customers through the door, but managing the numbers correctly is what keeps a business standing for years. Put the two together, and you get that familiar neighborhood pizzeria that's still there, still running, decades later. If you're thinking about opening a pizza restaurant or growing the one you already run, we'd recommend comparing the ratios covered in this video against your own numbers. Putting your food cost, staff cost, and channel-based profitability into a simple spreadsheet is a solid first step. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.